I was living what I thought was my dream life with Amanda. We had been trying for a baby for 2 years now with no success. My mother-in-law Barbara always gave me these sideways glances whenever the topic of grandchildren came up. I had a sinking feeling about the upcoming family gathering where I knew the subject would inevitably arise. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like button if you have ever felt wrongly judged by someone close to you. Life with Amanda started out as everything I had ever hoped for. We met during a charity event for underprivileged children, where I was volunteering my technical skills to set up their computer lab. Amanda was there as a child psychologist helping kids deal with trauma through play therapy. I was immediately drawn to her compassion and the gentle way she connected with those kids. I worked as a software engineer for a major tech company, developing applications that made everyday life easier for people. My career was on an upward trajectory with promises of promotions and leadership roles in the near future. Amanda ran her own small practice specializing in child psychology. She had always talked about wanting a big family, having grown up as an only child herself. We dated for 2 years before I proposed to her during a weekend getaway to Lake Tahoe. The wedding was intimate but beautiful, with close friends and family surrounding us, as we exchanged vows under a canopy of twinkling lights and autumn leaves. The first year of our marriage was blissful, as we settled into our routines, renovated our cozy 3-bedroom home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, and planned for our future family. The house had a backyard with enough space for a swing set and a treehouse. We had already designated one of the spare rooms as a future nursery, occasionally browsing baby furniture websites and discussing color schemes and themes. We both agreed on a gender-neutral approach, wanting to be surprised when the time came. After our first anniversary, we decided it was time to start trying for a baby. We approached it with excitement and optimism, both of us healthy and in our early 30s. Amanda downloaded ovulation tracking apps and read books about increasing fertility naturally. I adjusted my work schedule to be home during her most fertile days, and we both started taking vitamins recommended for prospective parents. 6 months passed with no pregnancy, then 9 months, then a full year. The disappointment began to weigh on us, especially Amanda. Each month when her period arrived, I would find her crying quietly in the bathroom. I tried to reassure her that these things take time, that many couples take longer than a year to conceive. She would nod and smile weakly, but I could see the worry lines deepening on her forehead. "Maybe we should see a doctor," Amanda suggested one evening as we sat on our porch swing watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. "Just to make sure everything is okay with both of us." "That sounds reasonable," I agreed, squeezing her hand. "Better to know if there is something we can address, rather than just wondering." We made appointments with Dr. Travis, a reproductive specialist highly recommended by friends who had gone through similar challenges. The initial consultations involved extensive interviews about our health histories, lifestyle habits, and family backgrounds. Next came the physical examinations and blood work for both of us. 2 weeks later, we sat in Dr. Travis' office as he reviewed our results. "Everything looks normal for both of you," he said, glancing between us with a reassuring smile. "Nicolas, your sperm count and motility are within healthy parameters. Amanda, your hormone levels and reproductive system appear to be functioning normally as well." "Then why has it not happened yet?" Amanda asked, her voice tight with frustration. "Sometimes it just takes time, doctor," Travis explained patiently. "About 15% of couples experience what we call unexplained infertility. The good news is that many of these couples do eventually conceive naturally. I would recommend continuing to try for another 6 months before we consider any interventions." We left the appointment with mixed feelings. Relief that there was no identifiable problem, but also frustration at the lack of a clear solution. Amanda seemed particularly deflated, having hoped for a simple answer that could be easily fixed. It was around this time that Barbara began to insert herself more aggressively into our situation. Amanda was her only child, and after losing her husband to a heart attack 5 years prior, she had become increasingly focused on her daughter and the prospect of grandchildren. Barbara was a formidable woman who had built a successful real estate empire alongside her late husband. She lived in a sprawling mansion just 20 minutes from our home and had always made it clear that family legacy was of paramount importance to her. She came from old money and old values, where a woman's primary purpose was to continue the family line. Her visits to our home became more frequent, and she always seemed to arrive armed with stories about friends, children, and grandchildren. Jane's daughter just had her third baby, she would announce over dinner. And she only 32, just like you, Amanda. Or my bridge partner grandson wife got pregnant just 2 months after their wedding. Such a blessing. These comments were always delivered with a pointed look in my direction, as if to imply that the delay must somehow be my fault. I tried to brush it off, attributing her behavior to an overeager grandmother-to-be, but the constant pressure was beginning to create tension between Amanda and me. "The women in our family have always been very fertile," Barbara remarked one Sunday afternoon, as we sat in her sunroom for tea. "My great-grandmother had 8 children, my grandmother had 6, and I would have had more if your father had not been so focused on his career." Amanda nodded, uncomfortably avoiding my eyes. I bit my tongue, not wanting to cause a scene but increasingly irritated by these implications. As the months passed, I began to notice changes in Amanda. She became more secretive with her phone, often ending calls abruptly when I entered the room. The joy and spontaneity drained from our attempts to conceive, replaced by a mechanical adherence to schedules and optimal positions. Sex once, an expression of our love and intimacy, became a clinical task to be performed at specific times. One evening, I overheard Amanda on the phone, her voice low and tense. "Yes, Mom, I know. But Doctor, Travis said everything looks normal for both of us." "No, I have not told him about seeing Dr. Morgan yet. I will soon. I just need to find the right time." When she emerged from the bedroom, I confronted her. "Who is Dr. Morgan, and why have not you mentioned him to me?" Amanda paled, then sighed deeply. "He is a specialist. Mom knows. She thinks we should get a second opinion from someone more experienced than Dr. Travis. And you did not think to discuss this with me first?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "I did not want to worry you," she replied defensively. "It is just a consultation, Nicholas. What is the harm in getting another perspective?" I ran my hand through my hair, frustrated not by the idea of a second opinion, but by the secretive way it had been arranged. "We are supposed to be partners, Amanda, making these decisions together." "I know, and I am sorry," she said, coming closer to place her hand on my arm. "I will call tomorrow and reschedule so you can come too." I nodded, trying to ignore the unsettling feeling that my wife and her mother were forming an alliance that somehow excluded me. The real trouble began when I discovered a medical bill from Dr. Morgan in our mail. Amanda had gone to see him without telling me, breaking her promise to reschedule. When I confronted her about it, her defense was immediate and rehearsed. "Mom said I should not wait. Dr. Morgan is extremely busy and rarely takes new patients. It was a favor to her that he saw me at all." "What about us making decisions together?" I asked, hurt by the deception. "What happened to that? This is about my body, Nicholas," she replied, her tone suddenly cold. "I do not need your permission for everything. I never said you did. But we are trying to have a child together. That involves both of us, does not it?" The argument escalated, with Amanda eventually storming out to clear her head. She returned hours later, having obviously been at her mother's house. The apology she offered felt hollow, and the incident created the first significant crack in our marriage. Barbara's intervention became even more direct after that. She insisted on hosting a grand family dinner, inviting relatives from both sides of the family. The ostensible reason was to celebrate her brother's 70th birthday, but I had a nagging suspicion there was more to it. The evening started pleasantly enough. Barbara's sprawling dining room was filled with the chatter and laughter of about 20 people. Wine flowed freely, and the food was, as always with Barbara gatherings, extravagant and delicious. I was just beginning to relax when Barbara tapped her crystal glass with a silver spoon, calling for everyone's attention. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight." She began, standing regally at the head of the table. "Family is everything to me, as you know. The continuation of our lineage, our legacy, is what gives meaning to our individual lives." My stomach tightened as her gaze settled on Amanda and me, which is why it pains me to see young couples struggling with what should be the most natural thing in the world. Barbara's voice dripped with false sympathy. Amanda and Nicholas have been trying for quite some time now to give me a grandchild. I felt the blood drain from my face as 20 pairs of eyes turned to stare at us. Amanda looked down at her plate, her cheeks flaming red. Dr. Morgan, who is one of the most respected fertility specialists in the country and a dear old friend, has been kind enough to look into their situation, Barbara continued. And while I do not wish to violate anyone's privacy, I think it is important for supportive family to understand what young couples are going through these days. She paused, taking a deliberate sip of her wine, before delivering the knockout blow. Sometimes the issue lies where we least expect it. And when a man's strong, virile-looking exterior belies certain deficiencies, it can be particularly difficult for his ego to accept. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked to Amanda, waiting for her to defend me to stop this public humiliation. But she remained silent, eyes fixed on her untouched dessert. Of course, Barbara added with a smile that did not reach her eyes, there are many options these days. Donor sperm adoption. Ways for a woman to become a mother, even when her chosen partner cannot give her that gift naturally. I stood up so abruptly that my chair toppled backward, crashing to the floor. Without a word, I walked out of the dining room through the front door and sat in my car, hands shaking with rage and humiliation. After what felt like an eternity, Amanda emerged from the house and slid into the passenger seat. How could you just sit there? I asked, my voice breaking. How could you let her say those things about me in front of everyone? She is my mother, Nicholas, Amanda whispered. And she does have my best interests at heart. And what about me? What about my dignity, my privacy? I turned to look at her. Did you tell her about my medical results? Did you share my private medical information with her? Amanda's silence was all the confirmation I needed. She needed to know, Amanda finally said. She is helping us find solutions. No, Amanda. She is helping you. And she is publicly humiliating me in the process. The ride home was silent, a vast chasm opening between us, where intimacy and trust had once lived. In the following weeks, I noticed the whispers and sideways glances from Amanda colleagues when I picked her up from work events. Barbara had spread the word about my supposed deficiencies throughout their social circle. The final straw came when a cousin of Amanda sent me a link to an article about dietary supplements that supposedly improved male fertility with the message, "Heard about your situation. This might help." Meanwhile, Amanda's relationship with her mother grew stronger as our marriage crumbled. She began spending more weekends at Barbara House, consulting with her about everything from our finances to vacation plans. When she was home, she grew increasingly critical of me, finding fault with everything from how I loaded the dishwasher to the way I dressed for work. The woman I had married, the compassionate psychologist who helped traumatized children heal, had been replaced by someone I barely recognized. Someone who viewed me not as a partner but as a disappointment, a roadblock to the family she desperately wanted. I threw myself into my work, often staying at the office until late at night to avoid going home to the tense silence of our house. My team was working on a revolutionary application that could potentially double the company market share, and I welcomed the distraction. I was even offered a promotion to lead developer, which would mean more money but also more hours away from home. When I shared the news with Amanda, expecting at least a perfunctory congratulation, she instead frowned and said, "So you will be even less available for fertility treatments. Great timing, Nicholas. Is that all our relationship is to you now? A means to having a baby?" I asked, the words torn from some wounded place inside me. "Do not be dramatic," she scoffed. "But yes, starting a family is important to me. It is supposed to be important to you too. It is. But not at the cost of my self-respect, not when I am being treated like some defective breeding stud who is not performing to specification." She rolled her eyes. "See, this is exactly the kind of fragile ego response Mom warned me about." That night I slept in the guest room, staring at the ceiling and wondering how we had arrived at this point, how the love that had once seemed so solid could have eroded so completely. The final breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. I had come home early, hoping to suggest couples therapy as a last-ditch effort to save our marriage. As I entered our house, I heard Amanda's voice coming from the kitchen clearly on the phone. I paused in the hallway, not intending to eavesdrop, but what I heard stopped me cold. I know Mom Amanda was saying, her voice tired and defeated. But it has been almost 3 years now. I am not getting any younger. A pause as Barbara spoke on the other end. Yes, I have thought about that too. Maybe it is time to consider alternatives. Another pause. Divorce is such an ugly word. But you are right. There are plenty of men out there who could give me the family I want. Men who are functional and who would not waste your precious fertile years. I heard Barbara's distinct voice through the speaker. I am beginning to think you are right. Amanda replied softly. I do need to put myself first now. The phone call continued, but I could not bear to hear more. I retreated silently, got back in my car and drove aimlessly for hours, the conversation replaying in my mind like a nightmare I could not wake from. When I finally returned home late that night, Amanda was asleep. I gathered some essential items and moved into a hotel the next day, sending her a brief text explaining that I needed space to think. Her response was telling, take all the time you need. Mom says I should be focusing on myself right now anyway. In the quiet of my hotel room, I made a decision. Before taking any irreversible steps, I would seek out the truth about my fertility from a source that had no connection to Barbara or her network. I researched extensively and found Dr. Hansen, a globally respected fertility specialist who had written numerous papers on male reproductive health. Getting an appointment with him required pulling strings and paying a premium, but within a week, I was sitting in his office explaining my situation. Dr. Hansen conducted a fresh set of tests, more comprehensive than any I had undergone before. A week later, I returned for the results. Mr. Nicolas, Doctor, Hansen said, reviewing my file, I can state with absolute certainty that there is nothing wrong with your reproductive system. Your sperm count, motility, and morphology are all well within normal parameters. In fact, they are above average in several metrics. Then why? I began confusion and anger competing for dominance. Has conception not occurred, he finished for me. That I cannot say without examining your wife as well. Fertility is complex with many factors at play. Sometimes there is no medical explanation at all, just unfortunate timing or statistical bad luck. He handed me a detailed report of my results. What I can tell you is that the narrative that you are infertile or somehow deficient is categorically false. Could the previous doctor have made a mistake? I asked. I requested the results from Dr. Morgan's office, he replied, flipping through his notes. Looking at these, I can see how someone might misinterpret certain values if they were pushing a particular narrative. But to an objective medical professional, these results would not indicate any fertility issue. I left Dr. Hansen's office with a strange mix of vindication and profound sadness. The medical truth confirmed what I had suspected. I had been scapegoated, my reputation and self-image sacrificed on the altar of Barbara, obsession with grandchildren, and Amanda's desperation to please her mother. Armed with Dr. Hansen's report, I arranged a meeting with both Amanda and Barbara at a neutral location, a private room at a local restaurant. They arrived together, Barbara wearing an expression of regal annoyance, Amanda looking nervous but defiant. Thank you for coming, I began once we were seated. I have something important to share with both of you. I placed Dr. Hansen's report on the table. I sought a third opinion from one of the most respected fertility specialists in the country. These are the results. Barbara barely glanced at the papers. Another doctor willing to tell a man what he wants to hear if he pays enough. Dr. Hansen has no connection to either of us, I replied calmly. He is renowned worldwide for his research. And he confirms what Dr. Travis told us a year ago. There is nothing wrong with my fertility. Amanda picked up the report, scanning it with a frown. Furthermore, I continued, Dr. Hansen reviewed Dr. Morgan's findings and found that they were misinterpreted, perhaps deliberately, to suggest an issue where none exists. This is absurd, Barbara snapped. Are you accusing Dr. Morgan of professional misconduct? He has been treating our family for 30 years. I am stating facts, I said. The narrative that I am the reason we have not conceived is medically unsound. Yet this narrative has been spread throughout our family and social circle, damaging my reputation and our marriage. I turned to Amanda, whose face had paled as she read through the detailed report. You shared my private medical information with your mother. You sat silently while she humiliated me at a family dinner. And recently I overheard you discussing divorce, seeking a more functional man. You were eavesdropping on me, Amanda gasped, deflecting from the real issue. I came home early that day, hoping to suggest couples therapy. Instead, I heard my wife planning to leave me based on a lie. Barbara slammed her hand on the table. Enough of this drama. The simple fact is that after 3 years of marriage, my daughter does not have the child she desperately wants. Whether the fault lies with you or not is irrelevant at this point. It is entirely relevant, I countered, because it speaks to trust, respect, and the foundation of our marriage. I looked directly at Amanda. I need to know if you are capable of seeing what has happened here. Can you acknowledge that I have been wronged, that your mother involvement has damaged our relationship? Can you stand up to her and commit to rebuilding what we have lost? Amanda glanced nervously between her mother and me, visibly torn. After what seemed like an eternity, she spoke. Nicolas, I think you are overreacting. Mom has only been trying to help us. Yes, maybe things got a little out of hand, but her intentions were good. In that moment, I knew our marriage was over. Amanda would never choose me over her mother. She would never see the manipulation and emotional abuse for what it was. I will be filing for divorce, I said quietly, standing up. I hope someday you find the family you want, Amanda. But I deserve a partner who respects me and stands by me, not someone who throws me under the bus at the first sign of difficulty. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind both the report and the last shreds of hope for reconciliation. The divorce process was surprisingly straightforward. We had a prenuptial agreement, and with no children involved, the main issues were the division of our assets and the sale of our home. I moved into a modern apartment closer to my office and threw myself into my work, earning that promotion and the substantial raise that came with it. Weekends that had once been filled with family gatherings and homemaking projects stretched before me, empty and uncertain. On the advice of a colleague, I joined a rock climbing gym, finding unexpected solace in the focus required to scale artificial walls. The way it cleared my mind of everything but the next handhold, the next step upward. A month after the divorce was finalized, I was at the climbing gym when I heard a familiar voice call my name. Turning around, I saw Natalie, Amanda's cousin, approaching with a tentative smile. Natalie was the black sheep of the family, having divorced her husband 2 years earlier, after discovering his affair with his secretary. Barbara had never forgiven her for ending the marriage, instead of working through it for the sake of appearances as she had advised. I heard about what happened, Natalie said after we had exchanged awkward greetings. I wanted to reach out sooner, but I was not sure if you would want to hear from anyone connected to that family. It is good to see a friendly face, I admitted. How did you know I would be here? I did not. I have been coming here for months. Turns out climbing is great therapy for dealing with controlling relatives and failed marriages. We laughed, and something tight in my chest loosened slightly. We agreed to get coffee after our sessions, and over steaming mugs at a nearby cafe, Natalie shared her own experiences with Barbara manipulation. She did the same thing to me, Natalie confided. When Jack and I were having problems, she convinced everyone it was my fault for focusing too much on my career. By the time I found out about his affair, half the family already believed I had driven him to it. I am sorry, I said, genuinely moved by her story. It is a special kind of betrayal, when the people who should support you turn against you instead. That is why I wanted to talk to you, she said, meeting my eyes directly. What she did to you was wrong, and what Amanda did was worse. I admire how you handled it, getting that third opinion, standing up for yourself. Fat lot of good it did, I said ruefully. Do not say that. You kept your integrity. That counts for something in this world. From that day on, Natalie and I began to meet regularly, initially just to climb together, then for meals, movies, and long walks where we talked about everything from our shared family trauma to our hopes for the future. She was different from Amanda in many ways, more independent and strong-willed with a wry sense of humor that often caught me by surprise. I fought against my growing feelings for her, concerned about the complications of becoming involved with my ex-wife cousin. But as months passed, the connection between us deepened into something I could no longer deny or ignore. 6 months after our first meeting at the climbing gym over dinner at my apartment, I finally voiced what had been on my mind. "I need to tell you something," I said, setting down my fork. "I have feelings for you, Natalie. Strong ones. And I am terrified that acting on them would make us both targets for more family drama." "Do you think I do not know that?" she replied, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I have been wrestling with the same fear. But I also know that I have never connected with someone the way I connect with you. And I am tired of letting Barbara control my life from a distance. If we do this," I said cautiously, "there will be talk. Accusations. Let them talk," she said firmly. "We both know the truth. We both know that what is between us started long after your marriage was over, built on mutual respect and understanding. That night changed everything. We decided to give our relationship a chance to face whatever backlash came our way together. And backlash there was swift and fierce. Barbara led the charge, spreading rumors that Natalie and I had been having an affair all along, that I had only married Amanda to get close to her cousin. Amanda, still firmly under her mother thumb, joined in the character assassination. Friends and family members took sides, some cutting ties with us completely. But others, those who had experienced Barbara manipulation themselves or witnessed it from afar, reached out with support and understanding. Through it all, Natalie and I grew closer, our relationship strengthened by the adversity we faced together. We moved in together after 3 months of dating, combining our lives with a sense of rightness that I had never felt before. 6 months into our relationship, Natalie came home from a doctor appointment with an expression I could not quite read. "Is everything okay?" I asked, immediately concerned. She handed me a small envelope. "See for yourself." Inside was an ultrasound image. At first, I could not make sense of what I was seeing. Then Natalie pointed to 2 distinct shapes on the grainy picture. "Twins," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "A boy and a girl." I stared at the image, then at Natalie, then back at the image. Joy exploded within me, so intense it brought tears to my eyes. "We are having twins," I whispered, hardly daring to believe it. She nodded, her own eyes shining. "The doctor says everything looks perfect. They are healthy and growing right on schedule." I gathered her into my arms, careful not to squeeze too tight, overwhelmed by a happiness I had once thought would never be mine. In that moment, all the pain of the past seemed worth it, a necessary journey to bring me to this place, to this woman, to these children who would be ours. We married in a small ceremony 2 months later, with only our closest friends and the few family members who had stood by us in attendance. Natalie was radiant in a flowing gown that accommodated her growing belly, and I had never felt more certain of any decision in my life. When our twins, Lily and Lucas, were born on a snowy December morning, I experienced a love so powerful and all-encompassing that it rewrote everything I thought I knew about life and purpose. Holding those tiny, perfect beings, I silently thanked the universe for the twisted path that had led me to this moment. News of the twins' birth spread quickly through the family grapevine. Some relatives reached out with congratulations and requests to meet the babies. Others maintained their distance, still loyal to Barbara and Amanda's narrative of betrayal and impropriety. Most surprising was the message that arrived from Amanda herself, sent through a mutual friend. "Congratulations. I am glad you found your happiness." It was terse, not entirely warm, but it represented a small crack in the wall of animosity, a tiny acknowledgement of the truth we had always known. There was no response from Barbara, nor did we expect one. As the twins grew from newborns to infants to toddlers, our happiness only deepened. Natalie returned to her career as an architect part-time, while I adjusted my work schedule to maximize our family time together. We built a life based on mutual respect, open communication, and the shared joy of raising our children. Sometimes, in quiet moments watching Lily and Lucas play together, I reflect on the journey that brought me here. The pain of betrayal, the humiliation of false accusations, the loneliness of standing alone against a tide of lies, all led to this extraordinary happiness I now live every day. I learned that sometimes you have to lose what you thought you wanted to find what you truly need. That standing up for your dignity and truth, even when it costs you dearly in the short term, can lead to rewards beyond imagining. That family is not always defined by blood or marriage, but by those who stand with you when it matters most. Most importantly, I learned that your worth is not determined by others' perception of you, by your ability to meet their expectations, or by the role they want you to play in their narrative. Your worth is inherent, unchangeable, and entirely your own to recognize and protect. If you have ever been falsely accused, scapegoated, or pressured to accept blame that was not yours to carry, I hope my story brings you courage. Stand firm in your truth. Seek evidence to counter the lies, and know that beyond the pain of betrayal there may wait a joy you cannot yet imagine. Have you ever stood up against false accusations or family pressure? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that better days can follow even the darkest times. Thank you for listening, and remember, the family you choose can bring more healing than the family you were born or married into.